Okay, auto ISO. Auto ISO has been around for many years in digital videography, but it's only in the last few years that it's been introduced into digital SLRs or DSLRs. And for me, it's one of the handiest features that could have been added. I'll give you an example of a situation. I shoot a lot of weddings in Spain and in England, and typically a day like this would be how I would shoot. What you're probably seeing on the video here is a scenario that I kind of have a bit of a problem with, or I did in the past before auto ISO was introduced. You can see here we've got really bright sunshine hitting the church, and then here in the wall you've got a very, very dark area. Now, let's say I'm shooting in aperture priority mode. I've got my camera here set to f8, I've got the ISO set to 100, and it's giving me readings of around 250th of a second. Now, that is perfect for outside because I can just shoot away, I can get the guests walking towards me, I can get any funny things that are going on, any candid shots, and I've got a fast enough shutter speed to know that I'm not going to get camera shake or blur. Now, what happens if I keep it on this setting and something funny happens in the church doorway or the bride's coming out? Let's see what happens to the actual reading as I move from outside to inside. I'm getting 250th at f8, 100 ISO. As I move indoors, that's dropped right down to 15th of a second at f8. Now that will cause camera shake or blurry photos, and I can't really have that problem at a wedding when I'm shooting a wedding. So, auto ISO, I'll show you the difference with that now. If I switch my camera to auto ISO, same situation, people are coming towards me, I'm shooting away outside the church. Once again, 250th of a second, f8, everything's fine, and the ISO is staying at 100 because while I'm outside, it has no reason to actually change. So let's see what happens now. Something happens, say the bride's coming out of the church, I want to quickly turn from what I'm shooting at here to there. As I go indoors, I've got 60th of a second at f8 or 80th of a second, it's fluctuating, but it's actually staying at a hand-holdable shutter speed based on the lens I've got. But the ISO has gone up to 640. So without me having to worry about the shutter speed, I know that I've got a safety aspect of the camera now. I can be shooting outdoors in the bright sunshine, quickly shoot indoors, and I've got a fast enough shutter speed to capture the action in the darkness, and the ISO has automatically gone up to compensate. It's made the sensor more sensitive, but at the same time, it's keeping my aperture of f8, so I know I'm going to get good depth of field, but it's also giving me a safe shutter speed, which is good for handheld photography. So for me, that is one of the best aspects of auto ISO, and if you have it on your camera, learn how to use it and learn how to use it in any situation. Just test it in situations like this where you've got dark shade and bright sunshine. Now, another way to safeguard this, to make sure you're keeping a good shutter speed at all times, is to actually switch your camera to shutter priority or TV mode and also use auto ISO. Now in this situation, I've set my camera to 250th of a second, which I know is fast enough that if I have to move about and take a shot quickly, I'm going to be able to get everything sharp and with no camera shake or anything. So same situation, I'm outside, I'm on auto ISO, and I'm getting 250th at f8 or f7.1, it fluctuates. The aperture is going to fluctuate when you're in shutter priority mode. So once again, I've got a super fast shutter speed, and I need a fast shutter speed because I'm going to spin round and quickly get a shot. And whereas with aperture priority, I had 60th of a second, that might cause camera shake as I quickly move to take the shot. 250th should be fine, so let's try that now. Everything's happening outside, I'm shooting away, 250th of a second, auto ISO, which is actually on 100 outside, and f8. Something happens inside the church, turn around, quickly take the shot, and what's happened now is the aperture's opened as far as it can to f2.8, and the ISO has gone to 250 ISO. So now I've got a shutter speed of 250th, the aperture's fluctuating between 3.2 and 2.8, and the ISO is only on 250. But I've lost that depth of field that I had before, but I've got a fast enough shutter speed to capture the action. And for me personally, I would rather have that than depth of field. I'd rather have sharp photos with the subject in focus and no depth of field, as opposed to the possibility of a blurry shot with good depth of field. There's no point in having that. So test this on your camera as well. Go on to shutter priority, set the shutter you think you're going to need for good handheld shots where there's no camera blur, and then auto ISO, and just see what happens to the aperture as you move around, and also what happens to the ISO, because that is one of the best safety features when you're shooting from light areas to dark areas whilst using auto ISO.